Woohoo! Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show, where designers are discussing design. We have two special guests for our episode, Matt Loomis and Isaac Shalev. And you might be noticing we only have two hosts. We have Tiffany. Want to say hi, Tiffany?
Hello.
And
yeah.
People will notice that we are missing Sen. And so we're going to try something different and just have two hosts for this episode. And hopefully two is enough for you. But we will be back to three hosts next week. Just a surprise meeting came up for Sen, so he's sad to not be here. But thankfully, Tiffany figured out all the tech, and we're here
this morning.
slightly late, but amazing that we are here. First off, we like to chat a little bit before we get to our guests about what we've been doing, what we've been playing, and I gotta ask my co-host here, Tiffany, what have you been up to lately?
Lately we on the house front, I built a bunch of shelves in my basement, which was super exciting because now I can get crap out of the house, which is great. But on the gaming front, I had a video review drop just now on my channel like 20 minutes ago, so go check that out after this show. And we also been doing live stream stuff still, so we're live streaming tonight 2-player games. You can vote now on my Twitter. There's a poll for what game we play live tonight. And other than that, I've just been freaking out and prepping for Essen. Like, that's about it.
That's a real thing. That's understandable. I myself just came back from Grand Con, had a wonderful time.
How was that?
It was excellent. A good presence there, some wonderful publishers, lots of players, obviously. So I got to play some published games, got to play some prototypes, I got to test some things from other designers. So it was a really great time. Overall, I highly recommend it. And even on the car ride home, got to design a game. So excited about that.
When are you not designing a game?
Well, yeah. I don't know. That's part of the sickness, right? Of you get ideas and you got to run with them. And on that note, one of the persons that was at Grand Con was Isaac Shalev. Why don't we unlock him? And sadly, his co-designing partner wasn't there, but Matt Loomis is with us here. Why don't say a little bit about your time, Isaac, at Grand Con?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. Really great to see you, not 24 hours after we last saw each other. But Tiffa, so nice to see you. Hopefully the new house is working out great. Grand Con was a ton of fun. I got to have my face up on a website as like an industry guest. So there's surely a smaller prefix than micro famous to describe where I'm at. Is it like Quark famous?
Well, it's more famous than me. So
I'm not sure that's true.
Well, it was. You were a guest.
I was a guest, so that was fun, and I got to participate in some really cool things. We went out to dinner with a whole bunch of industry VIPs. I got to meet Scott Alms and his wife, and they were absolutely lovely. I got to test some of Mike Fitzgerald's legacy game. He's got a new one coming out he's working on called Hard Boiled, a noir legacy game. I don't know what else I'm allowed to say about it. But yeah, that was super fun, and we put some of our own plays, some of our own what do you call them, Matt? Prototypes? That's the one. Prototypes. Put some of our own prototypes on the table, too.
On that note, what games, because I haven't seen Matt in a while, what games have you been playing, and what prototypes are you guys working on these days?
Let's see. Prototypes. We're doing actually more development than we are prototyping work. Just finishing up some games that have been signed and doing some follow-up work on that. Prototypes, we have the primary one is the one that Isaac was playing there. It was called Saturn Rising. It's going to be called something else. Yeah, I mean, we've been kicking around a lot of different things. We have an idea for, I don't know, lots of stuff, whatever. You never know until if they're actually going to come to fruition. Like, you can talk them up now and they're going to sound all kind of neat. And then you're going to ask 6 months later and be like, I threw that in the garbage can. So it's like it's way more exciting, I think, to talk about things that are actually a sure thing versus just like, yeah, I'm working on stuff. I mean, we're all working on stuff, right? That's the nature of the industry. So yeah. As far as what I've been playing published wise, let's see. Last 2 games that I played published, I actually just played Maori. I'd never played that before. It was kind of unique.
Oh, finally! Hey, yay!
Finally, hey, yeah.
I feel like every other week I say, so it's just like
I
that
don't-
mechanism in Maori, and you're like, I haven't played that game yet.
I traded for it. I played it. It was pretty good. I liked it. And actually, so this is, I played for the first time Quirkle. I'd never played Quirkle ever, and I played it with my kid. Yeah. So I played it with my son. My 6-year-old can play that game. It is actually a really good game for, being like I mean, obviously it was like a Spiel des Jahres winner.
Yeah.
But I was surprised at how good it was. Yeah, I was surprised at how good it was. And my kid was totally able to play too. And so the fact that, he was even able to understand the mechanics at 6 and understand some strategy at 6 was pretty cool. So those are the last 2 that I actually played.
Yeah, I've become a real advocate for this game, Lattice. It's spelled Latice.
I just got a copy of that.
Yeah, it's terrific, and it really has been a Quirkle killer because it does a lot of similar things. You're matching either colors or icons in this case. They're not shapes, and you've got that same kind of grid-like puzzle. But instead of having score and where you're writing down on a pencil and a pad and doing that addition, it's really a race to get rid of all your tiles, and good things to do in the game are those which allow you to eventually take additional turns. So making matches in multiple dimensions gives you the ability to take additional turns. I thought it was such an elegant way to take the score pad out of the game while giving you a very similar experience in terms of your decisions during the game.
Nice.
Yeah. It was interesting. Steve and I just tried it recently. The wind tiles definitely can, because you randomly distribute all the tiles to all players at the beginning of the game. We just had a game where I ended up with the majority of the wind tiles by quite a bit, and they allow you to push other tiles. So I definitely kicked butt. But aside from that, it was super great.
Yeah, the rules say that if you're playing a more competitive game, you should divide the wind tiles equally, and that's the only way I've ever played it.
Okay, so that's where we screwed up. See, that's why you're here, is to point out when I screw up. But while you're actually here, the reason why we asked Isaac and Matt to come on today is because today's topic is about co-designing. And these 2 gentlemen are people that co-design quite a bit with each other. And so they have a lot of experience and can talk a lot on maybe their process or hints and tricks that they've maybe discovered. So we're gonna figure stuff out. If you guys, as always, have questions in the you can leave questions in the chat, and we will try and bring those in as we see them / as they fit in. But yeah, I guess I'll start with Isaac. This one's gonna be it's a softball, but
good, I can hit those.
How many games have you and Matt co-designed together so far, or just how many games have you co-designed? Period, I guess.
So I'm monogamous when it comes to design. I've only co-designed with Matt, and I think
my dreams of asking you to co-design with your dad.
I think I've told this story before, but actually, I got into co-design because I forget who it was, but somebody on Twitter said, "Oh, I just started co-designing." I think it might have been Grant Rodick, and it's amazing. It accelerates you. It's so much more than double. It's like quadruple speed. And I just randomly tweeted back and said, I would love to do it. I don't really know any designers in my area though, but I'm super open to it. And of all people, John Gilmore tweets back, and he's like, "Sure, let's do a co-design." And I thought, great, let's do a co-design. Then Matt PMs me, and Matt and I had known each other for a little while already, and Matt PMs me, and he says, "Look, I'm no John Gilmore, but I would love to co-design with you as well." And
Nice.
Sure enough, a couple of weeks later, I broke up with John, and I've been exclusive with Matt ever since.
There's that dashing smile. What can I say?
So yeah, I think we've signed 7 or so titles together, and we've designed a handful more that hopefully will soon get signed, but something in that neighborhood.
All right. Well, here's the question then back to Matt. Why did you bother messaging Isaac? Why did you want to co-design?
I tried reaching out to a few other people before. There's just nobody in my area. I've actually tried to get some people in my area to co-design as well, or just work on design together, and it just hasn't worked out. So I don't know. I tried, some other relationships that kind of became like one night stands, I guess you could call that, where it's like, oh yeah, some ideas, and then you never have any follow up. And with Isaac, it just, it was yet another shot, right? Back in the co-design dating pool, I guess. And it happened to work out in this case. So, I mean, why I chose him, like he said, we had met before, met at some other conventions, hung out a lot. Personalities or thought processes were the same. And we had a lot of very upfront discussions, initially, as far as like, what are which was very different from anybody else, right? It was a lot less about, like, our initial discussions in regards to co-designing were a lot less about what game we were working on, and a lot more about what we wanted to get out of working together, right? So we approached it initially very much more like, why are we going to be doing this? Why are we going to be going into business together? And less about like, hey, why is this game going to be so cool? So that was, I think that was a good sign, and obviously has worked out for us.
Yeah, having those kind of discussions seem invaluable. What you said that nobody like local in your area was around or hadn't worked out. So are you and Isaac local, and how important do you feel being local and being able to meet in person is for co-designing?
Isaac and I are far from local. Okay. I'm in, Chicago and Illinois. Yeah, and he's in Connecticut. So, I've flown out to him before, and, we see each other at conventions, but no, we're not local. I mean, local, honestly, if we could be, like, I think that would be the ideal situation, right? Just being able to meet on a regular basis, weekly, would even accelerate this further, right? It would make the entire process a lot smoother, a lot better. But you work with what you can. It doesn't always work out that way. Some co-design teams, are local and can push out more content or push out, regular content. But I mean, everybody's got their own ways of working things through.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump this question to Isaac, actually. Matt mentioned, that conversation early on was more focused on kind of how you're going to co-design together, big picture stuff. Could you kind of talk through and maybe give some tips for people that are looking to co-design? What kind of conversations should they have early on so that they, can run the gamut, the long term?
Sure, and I hope audience can hear me all right. Somebody is doing some gas fracking in my neighbor's lawn, so I apologize if there's some background noise. But what Matt and I talked about early on were things like, what skills do we have and what gaps do we want filled? And I think that was really important, because you don't just want to jump into an idea and then figure that out and, oh, that's an exciting game. You really want to understand what roles you're going to play, because there's so many things that go into getting games from the ground up and getting them out to the public. And I like to talk about how design and development are really just one part of it. After that, you still have sales and marketing and relationships and networking and all of the support around continuing to be active in the industry. And so Matt and I really talked about a lot of those areas. We talked about how quickly we like to move from our heads to the table, how quickly we prototype. We talked about who will write rules, who will do balancing and tweaking mechanics, who's going to maintain relationships with publishers. And we just found a really nice fit that we tended to like designs in similar ways. I'm probably a little bit more trashy and Matt's probably a little bit more mathematical, but we had a lot of overlap, and neither of us are scared of the numbers. Neither of us don't care about story. But we also found a comfortable space in me doing a lot more of the external facing stuff and Matt doing some of the internal facing stuff. And so when we saw how nicely we laid over and filled each other's needs and wants, we knew that if the ideas were going to be good, we'd be able to get them to be published. We'd be able to kind of support that whole process.
Yeah, and I like how you put a little bit trashy, a little bit mathy. It's like a little bit rock and roll, a little bit country. That's a good mix, and yeah, being able to fill the gaps is super important. And I think that's one thing that you definitely get with co-designing that you don't necessarily with individual designing. But we have a question, and Brad Skaggs actually asked 2 questions from YouTube, and I'm going to pose these. The first one I'm actually going to pose to everybody. And we're just going to do a quick blast because I think there's a lot of answers to this one, which is, what are the design hotspots around the U.S.? He's always assumed Seattle. And there's been some stuff in the chat, like Marguerite, I don't know why I said your name wrong. I'm sorry, Max. Marguerite posted Seattle, Austin, Boston, Michigan. I threw out Portland in the Bay Area. I don't know if you guys know of any other hotspots. Anybody? Throw them out.
You know, I mean, Boston to New York, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on throughout that corridor. I'm in it. My little neck of kind of Fairfield County is probably one of the little dips along the way. But if you move over to New Haven, there's lots of interesting things happening just east of me. And certainly New York. I mean, if it's New York City, it's a hotspot for just about everything. And there are a ton of great designers in New York and a great meetup community. Gil Hova does a lot of work there, keeping that community running and keeping meetups happening. So yeah, I'd definitely say from New York to Boston, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. I was, where is it Daniel Solis is located? I know there's a little
in North Carolina. That's another hot spot, right?
He's got a hot spot in that area around the college that they're at. I know that they do weekly meetup events.
The Game Designers of North Carolina is the organizing group there. That's run by Matt Wolf. And they've got a podcast, and they bring on all their members on kind of a rotating basis to talk about design and talk about what they're up to. It's a really, really nice group, actually. Yeah.
And then I know Toronto. Toronto has a game making guild, or is it a league? I can't remember.
Game Artisans, no?
Well, the Game Artisans are across Canada, but we have a guild that different chapters within Toronto and region. We have an Ottawa chapter, a Kitchener-Waterloo chapter, and then kind of a London and area chapter. So those are kind of our kind of Ontario chapters, but we're coast to coast. So we have Halifax to Vancouver and groups in between places like Calgary and Edmonton. And so those are in Canada one of the ways to connect and find some other designers.
Yeah, I mean, I travel. There's a pretty big group in Madison, I mean, that's in Wisconsin, so it's a fair amount. But there's a good design group up in there. It primarily revolves around the Game Crafter, right, which is where that is housed. Milwaukee also has a sizable group, and Chicago, of course, has a really good design hotspot. There's actually a lot of really notable designers and also just a lot of playtesters even in Chicago. So, I mean, all these things are over an hour from me, but I travel to all of them when I can. But I think that design hotspots are going to be where you can make them too, right? And it's not going to be a hotspot if you don't continue to keep going, right? Or if all the people don't continue to keep going. So,
and I want to call one more out, which is Philadelphia through Central Jersey is another really big hotspot. There's a couple of conventions run by the Envoy folks, including DexCon, Dreamation, and Metatopia, that form the hub of that community. But there's designers all through the state of New Jersey and in Philadelphia who, you'd recognize their names, you'd know their stuff. Anthony Amato and Nicole Klein are out in Philadelphia, and just a really, really nice group. The Jay Treat and Doug Lewandowski and all these folks, and of course Stephen Bonacore is in that area as well. So really, really great group. Jeff Engelstein designs in that area. And even though these are names that lots of folks know, these people are super participatory and open, and you can get them to play your prototypes and get feedback.
Yeah, and I know West Coast, there's not a lot of representation in this chat of West Coast. I think I'm sadly it. So I'll just quickly say there's Playtest Northwest in the Seattle, Portland, Vancouver area, and then in the Bay Area, I don't know the name of the group, but there is a group that meets under Protospiel in the South Bay and stuff like that. So there's hotspots everywhere. I know Salt Lake, there's a group. So yeah.
Yeah, there's in San Jose. I'm trying to remember his name now.
I'm blanking on it too, but yeah, and he's the one who runs Protospiel.
Yeah. I can't believe I don't remember his name. I can picture his face.
I know, we hung out with him at the airport for like an hour and a half.
Jeremy Commander.
That's
Jeremy Commander. So yeah, he's another real advocate for the community and just one of these network weavers. So if you're out in the South Bay, definitely look them up.
Awesome. Well, changing gears just slightly, we've heard, it's fantastic to be able to design together when you're local to one another, but obviously both you two work with a distance, and I know other co-designers do as well. And a classic example, Sen's not here right now, but Sen and Jay work from afar most of the time when they get together. I'm sure just like you guys, you can work through some things fast. But what are some, this is questions from Brad Skaggs. When co-designing remotely, what resources do you use to share your ideas with your design partner? And do you call each other? Do you use Hangout tools? What are some of the ways that you can make the distance work? To Matt.
Yeah, so I mean, there are lots of communication tools, and any of them are going to work. I would say for you personally, use what is going to be familiar, use what you're going to use on a regular basis, right? If that happens to be Slack, we use Slack all the time for keeping organized with all the design ideas. If we're having just a 3-line conversation or a 6-line conversation, but it's about a game, that is now recorded specifically in that channel. And, we have, 25 channels about all the game designs that are currently going. And if we're talking specifically about that game, we're going into that channel for Slack. We did use Hangouts for a while. We had some technical difficulties that kind of pushed us away from that. But again, if it works for you, use that. We've moved on to phone calls more than Hangouts. We used to do a lot of video chat. We've moved on to just calling on the phone and then talking that way instead. We're actually talking a lot more frequently that way, so that's also worked out as well. Email, of course, but I think you want more of a central location. I know that Sen and Jay have a forum set up, which was probably set up before the advent or the popularity of things like Slack. But any of those project management tools are really going to be helpful and useful. We host all our files in Google Drive, so they're always available, not only wherever we are, but to each other. That's that boils into general project management in regards to just, instead of just specifically to design. That's going to be a skill that you're going to gain, or you're going to either acquire from somewhere else, or you're going to acquire here and then be able to use somewhere else and be better overall.
Yeah, and what about scheduling? So I had this question, and Brad Skaggs also asked this. Matt, how do you guys have a design schedule goal in regards to I'm going to get this game out in a year, 2 years, a quarter, and then how do you schedule? Do you have weekly sync ups? How do you schedule work?
Sure. Our communications, we schedule we have weekly calls, which are, for us, are Monday at this point. If we have something else pop up in the middle, we'll just shoot a phone call and chat for a while if we're both available. In regards to design specific scheduling, once we usually work with deadlines of, we either need to have this ready or decide that it's not ready by this event date, right? We're either going to be pitching this at this convention, or we're not going to be pitching this at this convention. And those are the primary hard and fast schedules that we have. Because sometimes, I mean, when you're doing something creative like this, sometimes you're going to have a glut of things that you're able to work on. You're going to have a slew of ideas, and they're all going to be moving forward at a fantastic pace. And then you're going to have like 7 things ready for an event. And sometimes you're going to be killing things left, right, and center because those playtests just aren't working out. The fun isn't there, the mechanics aren't there, whatever the case may be. And you might find yourself with a very limited pool of things to be offering. Now granted, you could adjust that based on your expectations for how quote unquote good you want the game to be or not before you're presenting it to somebody else. But those are the main deadlines. I mean, we do have some goals as far as what we're trying to accomplish. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, I maybe Isaac could chime in, but I'm pretty sure we're exceeding that already as far as like what we're trying to accomplish in a given year, right? We're looking at the long term, not just like, in the next, we need to have a game ready in 2 weeks, unless it's 2 weeks before Origins. And then it's like, we need to have a game ready in 2 weeks. So.
Totally. The chaos just before shows and the pulling together of the prototypes the last little bits is always a fun, frantic time.
Yeah.
Let's maybe jump right into that a little bit, Isaac. I'll go to you, but we've heard a little bit about your design process, between the shows, but then at shows, I've seen both of you go into pitches, but I know Isaac is more the pitch guy. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics of a pitch and then even after a pitch, being co-designers, who's communicating with the publisher? How do you juggle that kind of thing so there's not too many voices?
Yeah, that's definitely the area that I do most of the work on. And I do it in 2 ways. First off, Matt and I will talk about what we think is great about a game, like where is the hook. And when I also teach the game, I try and work different lines out, try and identify what's the quickest way to both explain the game and also really get people excited about it. What's fun and interesting and exciting, all working to getting down to that, 1 or 2 sentences that make somebody excited to hear about the game or kind of puts them in its frame. And then also you end up finding some patter, some banter, here's where the laugh line is, right? And you kind of work it out. Matt will hear me do this over and over and over again. So by the end of a convention, he's heard me deliver the same joke 30 times. And usually by around like the 15th or 16th time, he'll be like, that joke is not working. And I'll be like, it's not working for you anymore.
Yeah, it can wear out when you hear it that many times.
Yeah.
No, and it's actually really helpful to have Matt hearing those things because really after the first 2 or 3 pitches, I'll turn to him and say, Matt, what am I doing wrong? Right? Where is this not landing? Because it's so hard to get that perspective on yourself. You don't hear yourself. You don't, you're performing in the moment. And he has the opportunity to evaluate how people are accepting and receiving this, and we'll change it up on the fly. And he'll say, no, take out that bit. That's not working. Try and do it this way. Focus more on the experience. You're too much on the mechanism. All kinds of things like that. So that's a huge part of, I think, why we're successful in these pitches is that we're iterating on them even as we go. And that's some of the work that I do before a con is not just cutting up prototypes and sleeving and things like that. It's really doing a little bit of practicing what a pitch should be like. Going forward from a con, I pretty much do 99% of the communication with publishers. Matt CC'd on most of the emails and so forth, but there's a lot of just touch base. There's a lot of, hey, it's been a couple of weeks. Just wanted to say, hey, did you have any rules questions? We're available. Just maintain that kind of friendly, but put us back on top of your to-do list kind of touch base. And so the only frustrating thing about it is that, it's sort of like at work, it's frustrating because people use reply all, and at game, it's frustrating because people don't. So you wind up with this situation where like Matt was on every email except the last one where they offered us the contract.
Right.
What the hell? So that's a little bit, and sometimes I'll even like they'll ask a rule question and I'll kind of turn it to Matt, not because I don't know the answer, but because I just want to remind the publisher, hey, there's 2 people here, and just kind of get them thinking of us as a team. I think that's important to our brand, and it's something that we've been talking about also in terms of maybe coming up with a name for our design studio, so that it's not, I'm by nature of having my own show a little more visible than Matt is, I think, within the broader community, and I demo for Eagle Griffin, and just I'm a little bit more visible, and we really want our thing, our project to kind of have a brand and a way to reference itself.
Yeah, you guys need a cute couple's name. I can't.
Oh,
I
geez.
yeah, I don't even know.
Like Jordan and Mandy.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Well, you guys could get shirts with your names on them. That would help.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Then you'd just be ripping on their stuff. You were talking about con prep. I mean, I think most designers know before the con, you're just cutting and sleeping everything under the sun. But how does that work with co-designers? Whenever you guys need to make multiple prototypes, are you guys making 2 of everything because you guys aren't local, so you have to test remotely? Do you guys, if you're both going to the con, do you split the work of creating the prototype?
Yeah, well, usually what happens for us is that each person is kind of holding on to certain designs. So like right now, I'm holding on to this Saturn Rising, which is, it's like a spaceships flying around in a Robo Rally meets Hanabi kind of way. So I'm holding that design, and so I don't even think Matt has a prototype for it. He sees all the files, he reads the rules, he hears the playtest feedback, but I don't think he's actually got that prototype. Similarly, he's holding on to a couple of games that we're working on. And so we've got a game about, building a town and then having monsters come and stomp on it, sort of like how everyone played SimCity in the 90s. And so he's got that design, and I actually have a sort of a semi-prototype of it. It's probably not up to date, but I've got like some cards I can lay down and, do something with. But he's kind of leading the design. Over the life of the design, we'll swap, right? We'll trade off at different times. So by the time it comes to prototyping for a convention, it's whoever's got the design makes the prototypes typically. Every now and again, we'll wind up with multiples. Like I made my own version of Saikatsu because it's just so much fun and I needed to play it all the time. And so I had a version of that I brought to a con. But no, typically it's whoever's holding it is going to be the one who makes all the prototypes.
Okay, so you guys are just mailing stuff a lot, I'm assuming.
Oh, we mail nothing. No, we don't physically.
Oh.
I mean, we mail stuff to publishers, but we create print and play files for one another, and we'll make local prototypes if we need to. We've used Tabletop Simulator a little bit. It's a real pain. So it's more useful, I think, for remote pitching, like video pitching European publishers, than for maintaining an ongoing prototype. But I talked about this actually with Dirk Niemeyer, and so from his perspective, as a company that has more resources, it's very easy for them to maintain a digital version for prototyping. But for the two of us, as like people who are doing this on a hobby basis in terms of the hours and the resources that we're able to put in, it's just a little too much to maintain a digital prototype in earlier phases of working on a game.
Yeah, I've heard Steve cuss a lot at Tabletop Utopia, so we get that.
Cool. Jumping back to Matt, talking about this being a hobby on the side. Both of you have full-time jobs. How do you juggle, and what do you prioritize? Are conventions or shows that you need to attend, and what advice would you give people out there who may have never been to a convention? We recently just did an episode focused on conventions, but just give maybe a little additional information on that front, especially as co-designers. Do you divvy it up? Do you try to go to shows together so that you can work on stuff together? What are some tips in that regard of co-designing and doing conventions?
Sure. As far as like divvying shows up, I think that Isaac is traveling to more shows. Well, he is traveling to more shows than I am at this point. Just a case of schedule, a case of availability, or willingness to make that flexibility and attend those shows. The major pitching conventions right now for us are Origins and Gen Con. We both attend those. Isaac will attend some smaller conventions that are a bit more local, I attend some local conventions here where it's just more of a case of how much time do you have on the weekends? How much money are you willing to pay for travel? What are you going to accomplish by doing so? Now, as far as advice in regards to co-designing, you should try to attend a couple of the same conventions, especially the biggest ones in a year. Sorry about that. Apparently somebody's at my front door. Especially the bigger ones in the year. But I would say that if you are going to take the effort to attend those conventions, that you make the most of them, right? That you either accomplish, that you're going to the same convention to either do, to accomplish a goal, to pitch 20 publishers, or you're going to, work on co-designing, half the time you're there, not just like go there and meander around and be the typical introvert that a lot of us really are, right? If you're going to take the effort, I would say make sure that you're going to go be extroverted for as long as you can. Go and make the most out of all those opportunities that you can while you're there, and don't be afraid to do so, right? Don't go there and be like, yeah, I really don't want to talk to anybody. Why did I even do this? Like, get over that before you go, right? I know that's not really necessarily related to co-designing, but I think that's advice for anybody, any designer who's asking themselves, should I be traveling to Gen Con? Should I be traveling to Origins, right? If you're going to Origins and you have one pitch with a publisher, you didn't prep enough. You should have more than that, in my opinion. Well,
Origins especially, because we heard in the last show when we were talking about conventions, with Origins you have a lot more opportunities to pitch because it's somewhat of a smaller show. Right. But I want to go back, Matt, to, I think that you touched on something that a lot of designers and just a lot of people in general have potentially an issue with, and that's being an introvert and going to these conventions, especially when you have to put yourself out there pitching to publishers. Do you have any tips or any advice to help people get over their nervousness or anything like that you use that might help?
So, I don't know. I found a design partner who's very outgoing, willing to talk. I mean, he'll say that he's an introvert in like his normal life in other industry, but like in the gaming industry, he's like a big extrovert for some reason, or seemingly a big extrovert in comparison to all the other introverted people we have. I mean, the advice that I would have is that realize that everybody is, everybody in this hobby is pretty introverted to begin with. So, you're not like going to walk up to somebody and they're not going to understand why you're shy, or they're not going to like hate you for asking them a question or asking them, if you're going up to a publisher's booth and saying, hey, is there somebody that I can talk to about pitching games? Or, I'm a game designer. I have these ideas. Is there somebody that I can meet with? Nobody's going to hate you. They're not going to like shun you, and they're not going to talk bad about you behind your back. I mean, that's really more of a general advice, boosting self-confidence and just in accepting that, yeah, there's going to be no's and there's going to be yeses, and there's some people are going to have time and some people aren't. You can try to pave that with a fair amount of prep work, making sure that you've sent out your emails, which are easy for introverts, or should be, because it's not face-to-face communication. If you have appointments, it's very easy for somebody mentally to just be like, yep, like they have time for me because we made an appointment, and that should be a lot easier. So doing that work ahead of time should hopefully help out in that regards.
I want to follow that up and turn this question to Isaac, but I know both of you are very intentional about this and are thinking through this, and so I know it's kind of a moving target. But what about branding yourselves as co-designers? I know you've thought through that already, and you're also trying to find out new ways to do it even better. What would you give as tips to other co-designers out there, or designers in general, on how to start building a brand for themselves, or start building, an expectation from publishers?
Oh God, I think we're maybe the worst people to ask this question.
No. I think you guys are very intentional, and I think you're continuing to work on it. So you might be open with good questions.
Well, I don't think that we've cracked this nut. I do think we've thought a lot about it, and so I'm a little hesitant to give anyone else advice because I think we're still finding our way.
Sure.
I think where I would start is less thinking about your brand to consumers and more thinking about your brand to publishers. And what I mean by that is, this is probably something that, your mother might have told you when you were growing up. If I said to this person, I'm, Isaac's mom, what would they say to me about you? Right? What's your reputation? What do people think of you? And when it comes to publishers, we really want publishers to think of us as inventive and clever. Right? We make lots of different kinds of games. And so if you're going to have an appointment with Isaac and Matt, you're going to see some new and interesting things that are relatively broad, eclectic. You might see a dexterity game. You might see a worker placement game. You might see a party game. You might see a stock mechanism game. So we want them to know that it's going to be inventive and creative and clever. But we also want them to know that we are that we're business people, right? That we are not going to act in unprofessional ways, that we are sophisticated in terms of talking about contracts and licensing and thinking about markets and thinking about brands. All of those things are important to us in how publishers think about us. And lastly, we want publishers to know that we are good communicators and that we're not going to leave them in the lurch, and we're not going to do something and then not get back to them. And if we make a commitment, they can count on us to be there on time, that they can count on us to be at meetings, that they can count on us to respond to emails and so forth. So that's what we want our brand to be.
Okay. So building brand, I mean, I think building brand is important in anything that you do. And that's the fact that you're bringing something different to the table every time is pretty crazy, I feel, because I'm just trying to do one game right now and it's blowing my mind. How do you come up with, or how do you two decide, like, we're going to build a worker placement game, or do you just have inspiration, or how do you pick the next thing that's going to be the new innovating? Like, what's your secret, essentially?
Well, I want to say first that I'm not sure that this is a good decision, right? And in fact, we've heard advice from people saying it's a bad decision. So, when you think about like Uwe Rosenberg or Stefan Feld, everyone knows what kinds of games they make, and they've established a brand for themselves around mechanisms. And we haven't done that. And we also haven't established a brand around a theme or even like Scott Alm's Tiny Epic Something. Now, the truth is those games have many different mechanisms, and he is quite eclectic as a designer, but the box feels the same, right? It's in that same size box, and it's got that same name. And so there's more stability there. So maybe we're making a terrible mistake. And I just want to put that out there. So, if anyone copies us and fails, we admitted it up front. But in terms of getting all those ideas, so Matt and I started from a place where we had been designing on our own. And when we kind of first got together, we opened up our notebooks. And I think most designers probably have tens of ideas that are not yet games. And you sort of go through them and say what seems promising and what doesn't. And over time, your idea generation happens much more quickly than your ability to create games. So you never really run out of ideas. It's just a matter of which of them are going to snap into focus enough. I think for Matt probably does, and he can speak for himself too because he's here, but I think Matt probably is able to run through what a game will feel like in his head much more effectively than I can. I tend to want to get it to the table and see if it talks back to me. But both of us have very, very, very little patience for darling designs. So if a game isn't working, we're much, much more, going to just walk away from it and try something else, because there's no shortage of ideas, and we'll find something that sings. And when you have that experience of putting a game together and it does sing, it reminds you, it reinforces to you all those games that aren't working, and just walk away from them. You're going to find something that really works.
Oh, there's my mic. This is gonna maybe. I realize our time is just flying by, which it always does with you guys, which I always appreciate. Such good advice. The time flies by. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about some of the games that are coming up on the horizon, which ones you couldn't talk about. So I'll throw this at Matt, and Matt might throw this at Isaac. I don't know. But Matt, why don't you at least start us off with what we could look out for? I know there's a Kickstarter coming. Is that right?
Yep, there's a Kickstarter coming from Gray Fox Games called Panda Pursuit. So it's funny because one of the things that we really like about the game is it has a neat little innovative score mechanism, but at its core, and we kind of joke about this, but it is the truth that it is a roll and move game.
Oh
right?
God, don't say that. That's the one thing the publisher told us not to say.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I missed that memo. No, who watches this show? No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, like, but it's funny. It's obviously not just roll and move. There are decisions to be made, but there are dice that are rolled in relation to the movement. So I don't know. Maybe that's a designer joke, and it's not actually as funny as I think it is. So yeah, that's the Kickstarter that we have coming up. We have a couple designs coming up for 2017 and 2018 already. The only one that we don't have anything locked down as far as dates. I don't think publishers do that until 3 minutes before they decide to print.
Right. When the boat's on the water, they tell you the release date.
Yeah, exactly. So
the boat's in the port, and then they know the release date.
Well, and fair enough. I mean, there are boats on the water that can't dock now. There's that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of things swirling around.
Yeah. But no, I think we're allowed to talk about Saikatsu coming out from IDW. They're shooting for spring, so we're excited about that. That's a tile-laying game where you're building this shared garden, but you're competing over who has the best view of the garden. And if you've been following along on my Twitter feed at Kind Fortress, you've seen lots of pictures of it and lots of people playing it. It's one of those 15, 20-minute games that everywhere you are, you can just take it out and play it. So that's
video. Is there not?
There's a video on the BGG stream. There's even one on YouTube on my channel, which was the pitch video, actually. So you can see how I pitched a pitch using video and using Tabletop Simulator. It's on Tabletop Simulator. If anyone wants to go and check it out, you can find it. It's open. It's available. You can be playing this right now on Tabletop Simulator. I don't know why you're still watching. You should be playing Saikatsu on Tabletop Simulator.
Watch and play. Watch
and play. And that's SEIKATSU. And in 2018, we'll have something from Arcane Wonders, but we're not allowed to say any more about that. And we are actually right now in the process of signing what will be our 10th design. So we can't say anything because the ink is not dry, but we're in the negotiation process.
Party coming soon.
Game. Yeah. Definitely vague booking or vague blogging or vague tubing. But yeah, vague brag. No, the bragging is not vague at all.
Okay.
So those I think are the things coming out in the next little bit. But don't forget that we just had Retreat to Darkmoor, which came out at Gen Con from Action Phase Games, Indie Boards and Cards. So that is a hot release, and I hope everyone will check that out. And of course, you can still pick up Ravenous River. Cosmic Kaboom will be delivering soon, which is Matt's design from Minion Games. And of course, if you want to go back catalog, you can also pick up Dragon Flame, also from Minion, which was a Matt solo design.
Yeah. So we've touched on this a little bit. You guys have given great advice, but I want to focus it in to advice that you would give new designers, and it can be for solo design or co-design. I mean, whatever you want, but I'll start with Matt. What advice would you give brand new designer?
My advice to a brand new designer would be, and you've maybe heard it, but it's important, is to fail faster, right? I guess don't be afraid to fail and accept that you're going to fail and actually look to fail, right? And the reason that I say this is because you're going to learn more things from failure than you are from success. Right? If you come out, you design a game, and your design just automatically works, and it gets picked up and published, and you sell 20,000 copies, you have no idea why that happened. Maybe you have some idea, but you don't have a lot of ideas, right? But if you're in the trenches, if you're really understanding mechanisms of how a game works and trying new things and they don't work, and you try something else and they don't work, and you're actually analyzing why those things are not working, or what didn't work, what did work, you're going to grow and become a better designer in the long run than just kind of a a one-hit wonder that could happen to some people. So yeah, fail, be okay with failing, and look to fail faster.
That is great advice. All right, Isaac.
I think I would recommend that designers ask themselves what they're really trying to get out of this hobby or this job or this career. And ask that question of yourself in the beginning and repeat that question every year. If you want to make games because you want to play with your friends and with your family, that's one kind of engagement. And if you want to, Matt and I are not shy about this at all. We want to be commercially successful designers. That's our goal. We want to make games that people buy and play all over the world. And in order to do that, we got to do a lot of things like becoming part of the industry and networking and relating to people and helping others so that we really are contributing to the hobby as a whole in order to achieve that. And if we just wanted to make games that were fun for us to play with our family, we wouldn't need to do all those things. So ask yourself what you want out of this, and it's okay if that changes, but then go and do the things you need to do to make those goals happen.
Awesome. Well, our time is gone. Thank you so much, both Isaac and Matt, for being with us, chatting with us, giving our viewers lots to chew on. I want to give a plug for next week's episode. We will have Gil Hova, who was mentioned already in our discussion, and Jeremy Salinas, the Man versus Meeple. We'll be discussing design with player count in mind. An interesting topic. So if you are curious, we'll talk about the whole spectrum, designing with small player counts, large player counts, spectrums of player counts. Can you design a 3-player only game? All that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that topic, we'll be doing that next week. Sen will no, I don't think Sen is back with us next week. Brian Lewis will be in his place. So stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Twitter or online and all that good stuff. So till then, keep making great games, and we look forward to playing your game soon. Ciao.